everyone, it's Miss Brenner. I hope you're all doing well and staying happy and healthy. This is the recording of the directions for our apocalyptic research assignment. For this assignment, you will be completing a essay, and the essay is going to be a research-based analysis of a short story within the apocalyptic genre. So we have covered several different short stories within the apocalyptic genre, all of which you could choose from. So for this research, you are going to use a reliable search engine to research nonfiction content related to your apocalyptic category of choice. You will need to find 6 articles that complement the allusions within the short story and a category provided by Ms. Brenner, which is me. Your research should contemplate and support further development of intellectual literary discussions supporting the fictional world built by the author of the short story. I do want to point out that one of your 6 sources is the short story itself. So you will need to create a Noodle Tools source for your short story that you will be analyzing, and then create Noodle Tools cards to go with that short story. So when you are researching, you need to find 5 other pieces of nonfiction to pair with your short story. And I understand that that might seem overwhelming at first, so I have some recommendations of things that you might want to research to pair with your short story, such as an article on the author who wrote the short story, an article on the inspiration for the setting of the short story, or any other time period or any other information as far as the background of the story. At least 2 articles on the topic of the apocalyptic destruction within the story. So obviously if it is a war-based story, as far as the tools of war that were used, most of our stories I think involve nuclear war, so looking into the topic of a nuclear apocalypse. If it's about the plague, looking at different forms of the spread of disease throughout history and what creates the most destruction through a plague, how the spread of disease works. As far as the religious one, obviously looking at different religious testimonies of what the apocalypse or second coming may be like, or the end of the world in general. Particularly Nightfall is obviously a higher science fiction story that's taking place in a different world, but the religious aspects of that world are mimicking a lot of the religious tension felt in our own world. Also, maybe looking for a review or analysis of the story itself. A lot of different creators on YouTube or other podcast platforms create analysis videos or articles about different stories, particularly the ones that I included. So yes, your research will lead to an essay. This essay is going to be focusing on one of the selected short stories in connection to the genre of apocalyptic literature. You are analyzing the author's ability to share a universe with a moral message about humanity through the apocalyptic medium of the short story. In essay form, you should connect examples from your research materials to the literary tools such as allusion and motif used by the author to convey your hypothesized theme. Now, this is not a research project about Dry. We have read Dry together, and I have provided many examples of nonfiction to connect back to Dry. I did that specifically to try and set an example for you as to what I am looking for in your own research in connection to one of these short stories. So please do not complete research on Dry. You will not receive credit for research on Dry. I have already provided many nonfiction articles. I'm asking you to now do the same for a different piece of literature. So just in case you're not sure what short stories I'm talking about, we had 4 categories of apocalyptic literature that we looked at. We had environmental, war, plague, and religious or otherworldly. And the stories are listed in this chart that went into each of those categories. So any of these stories would work for this research assignment. So for environmental, we have Our Scorched Earth and Hey Come On Out. I think we read that back in week 14. War, we have Flash Crash, Fade to White, and I also included War of the Worlds in case maybe an apocalypse where it's a war versus another set of beings would be more interesting to you. That is also a possibility. We have Plague, which was Patient Zero and Speech Sounds by Octavia Butler. And then Religious or Otherworldly is The End of the World as We Know It, and Nightfall by Isaac Asimov. So any of these stories that are in the chart are a good option for your short story analysis that you will be completing research for this week. As far as your research requirements, so once again, you'll have 6 sources within Noodle Tools. One of your 6 is your short story. The other 5 are going to be published articles that should be published in 2020 or more recent. So we want to try and be as recent as possible. Understandably, if this is a much older story, you may need to backtrack a little bit, such as information for the author, considering that some of those authors are no longer with us. That is understandable. But if we can stay more recent, such as information about the spread of disease, please try to stay more recent, because obviously our understanding of science has changed over time. An article from 1950 on the spread of disease is not going to be on the same level as an article that is more recent. We need to make sure that it's published by a reputable author, which means it is not Wikipedia and it's not Reddit. Those are fine places to start if you are really, really lost as far as finding resources for these stories. If you scroll down all the way to the bottom of Wikipedia, you can see the sources that other people used in order to get you started on the topic of maybe Octavia Butler. Maybe you've never heard of her. She's a very well-known author, and so maybe you start on Wikipedia and then you scroll all the way down to their sources, and you can look there in those sources then for your information. Your source should be 3 to 5 pages. You can easily find that out by clicking the print button. You don't actually have to print, but it'll tell you how many pages you're looking at. And the majority of your article needs to be focused on the assigned topic. So if you are looking for an article about your author, the majority of the article should be about your author. So once again, just to note, this research is not about dry. It is not to be paired with dry. It is not a research project about dry. This is to demonstrate for me the skills that we practice through dry, pairing nonfiction with fiction to try and hit at the deeper message that the author is trying to show their reader through their writing. So these are a couple of the different articles that I used in comparison with dry, just to kind of jerk your memory as to what I'm looking for you to do. And then once again, we should be pretty comfortable with Noodle Tools considering we did it this past week in week 14. But if you are uncomfortable with Noodle Tools, please let me know. As you can see in the picture, your Dropbox is going to be called Online Apocalyptic Research, but if you are in my block for in person, it's going to be called Block for Apocalyptic Research. So when you go to share your Noodle Tools cards with me online, you just type that into the share place. Alrighty. Continuing on, you're going to create a project with your name, and then it's going to say Apocalyptic Research. You're going to create your sources, so you should have 6 sources total, and you should have 2 cards per source. And then each of your sources, with each of their cards, should have a direct quote with an in-text citation, 2 examples of either paraphrased or summarized information, and 2 examples of reflection on the topic, how does your nonfiction relate back to your fiction? I did include these citations for all of these stories. The only one I'm missing, and I'll update, is the citation for Nightfall. But other than that, all your citations for your short stories are at the bottom, so it should be fairly easy for you to fill it in. Alrighty guys, that is everything that I have to say about the directions. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to send me an email. I'd be happy to help you and answer any questions that you have. So in week 15, we are just working on the research. We will work on actually writing your research essay next week. Alrighty guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye.